Hello everyone, JavaMentor.net here. In today's video, let's learn about logging. What is logging? Well, that is a way to print information from your program, from your application, so you can later better see what happened, so you can easier track your bugs, and so on and so on. This is the log. So when we start our application, Spring is printing some information into the console. So we can see what happened. Second level cache is disabled. There is no load time viewer setup, blah, blah, blah. Hikari pool is starting. Then, I don't know, no JDA platform available, and so on and so on. So up until now, when we wanted to print some information, we used this system out print line command. And this is okay if you're developing something on your local machine. But the downside of this is that this system out print line output is going only to the console. You can see system out print line here, but it's not going to any hard drive. It's not going to any file. So if I stop my application, there is no way that I will see this system out print line in any file. That is the problem. And when you do logging, so you go, for example, like this, log.debug, author ID is, and then you output ID, then you concatenate ID with this, and you put this string in log, that is preserved in the file on the hard disk. So even if your application is down, you can see logs. So how did I do this? Log.debug. Logging framework is coming with Spring, so it's pre-configured, everything is okay, you can start using it. We even introduced Lombok into our project, so we can use this SLF for J annotation by Lombok, and this is an acronym for Simple Logging for Java. So put this annotation on your class, and then you can access to this object. You can go log dot, and then you can choose few levels of logging. Let's stick, for example, with debug for now. Log.debug, and then you're logging something into your file. If you take a look at your logs, all of them has this info label, which means that all of those logs are at info level. You don't see debug level logs. If you want to enable those debug logs, so let's say you're looking at this log and you don't understand what's wrong with your application, and let's say something is wrong. You want to downgrade your logging level to debug because info is default. You want to downgrade to debug to see if you have more logs, debug and info included, maybe you will have a better idea what's going on. How to change logging level? Well, if you put this logging.level.root equals to debug, then you will see all debug logging in your console. Okay, and now when we start our application, there are plenty of things that was not visible previously. This message was not visible before we set this property. So you can see here for every single bin, Spring did an output. I am creating shared instance of this bin, and then the name of the bin, and plenty of other messages because we turned on debug mode. Auto wiring by type from bin name this through this factory method, blah blah blah. There are plenty of messages, debug messages, so checking zero named HQL queries, and so on and so on. If we try our endpoint now, this endpoint, we will see this message in the log. So let's give it a try. Send. And here, if you go down, you can see author ID is 555, and that message has a debug label. So if we try to turn off debug level, So now we have default level, which is info, and we start our application, and then we try to invoke our endpoint. We will not see this message in the log because default level is info. So those are logging levels. If level is info, that means that you will see info messages in the log, you will see warn message and error. So everything info included and everything after info. If level is debug, then you will see this. If level is trace, then you will see this. So those 5 levels are 5 levels of logging. Usually info is default, and usually you want to default to info. So you want to go info here and then log something. Usually you want to use info for logging, and there are 2 other cases where you want to use this warn and error. So sometimes when you want to print a warning to your logs, because maybe something is not an error, but it's very weird behavior, maybe some field is null, but it's not recommended for that field to be null, then you want to print warning in the console, and you're using this warn level. And whenever you want to log something that where error happened, you will use this error. So for example, this is a good opportunity to use error. So you want to say something like this: log.error, and you want to say, I don't know, here we had author is unknown, and you want to print, I don't know, author ID if it's present, and so on and so on. So every single time where you have exception, here for example, you want to do something like this: log.error. So first of all, you want to go here at slf for j, and then you want to say log error, and then something wrong happened, blah blah blah, any message, and you want to pass your exception to that error method. Every single of those levels has multiple methods. So inside error method you can pass only string, so some message to log, but you can pass string, and also you can pass exception as well. And this is the best practice before rethrowing an exception or something like that. So you can here go throw new runtime exception and something like this. But even if you are throwing an exception, make sure to log it in this fashion, because if you omit this, so if you just throw an exception, client will see this exception. So if your front-end colleague is calling your application, he will see the exception, but that exception will not be preserved in the logs. So let's say your front-end colleague tried some endpoint, he saw exception, and tomorrow he's asking you, hey, yesterday I tried your backend application, I was trying somewhere around in the morning, around 10 when I came to the office, and something was wrong. Can you take a look what happened? But you don't have logs. He received logs, but it's not his duty to, copy paste logs that he received and paste it to you. But it's up to you to find that error in the logs and see what happened. And that's basically everything that you should know about logging. Yeah, the last thing that I want to say, there are plenty of levels of logging: trace, debug, info, blah blah blah. And this is a good example of chain of responsibility pattern. Another good example of chain of responsibility pattern that we will see in our playlist is Spring Security. So in Spring Security you will see how one request go through multiple filters, and every filter is doing something with that request. And just one small addition to this: if you want to have different levels of logging in different areas of the same application, that is also possible. So in our application.properties we set root logging level root equals to debug, and that means by default it's, let's say, debug level in our application. But we can say something like this: logging.level, And for this package, we want debug mode. For this package, we want error level, which means that all classes from this package, which are basically classes from Spring Web module, will print debug and everything after debug, and all classes from Hibernate will only log error level logs. And that's it. Remember that every single time you want to log informations, what's happening inside your application, and those logs will be your best friends, because if you don't have logs, you're blind. You don't know what was the value of this. You don't know. You cannot start application in debug mode if your colleague experienced some bug on QA environment, but you need to rely on logs. Those logs are very, very important. Don't ever forget to log, especially when error happens, and it's always a good practice to log things. More is better. I mean, of course, you can put so many things in logs, and your logs can grow so big, but in my own experience, I heard plenty of times, hey, we don't have logs, we don't know what's happening, let me add logs and I will redeploy applications, so we will see what happens. And I never heard from anyone that he complains like, hey man, you are putting too many logs, can you please reduce your logs, our application is very slow because of logs. So that's it about logging. See you in the next video.